What's good, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, aka Franchise Play, and I'm coming to you with the recap for UFC Fight Night Manila. And it took place, actually, you had to get up early if you were going to watch this. Main event was Frankie Edgar against Urijah Faber. I don't know if a lot of people realize just like how significant that fight is or was. It's two of the greater lighter weight fighters in history of mixed martial arts. And they went head to head. I mean, obviously, Faber's 36 years old. Edgar's only 33. So, you know, Faber's not necessarily in his prime, but I think he's still a good fighter. So that's why I was excited about the fight. Frankie Edgar wins the fight pretty clearly. Unanimous decision, 50-45 on all three scorecards. Don't take that to mean that the fight wasn't competitive, though, because the fight was competitive. Urijah definitely made sure that, you know, Frankie couldn't dominate him, but I felt that Frankie kept him on the defensive the entire fight, totally took away the takedown game. As a matter of fact, Frankie Edgar secured 4 takedowns and Faber didn't get any, and I felt pretty strongly that in order for Faber to have an opportunity to win the fight, he would need to be able to take Frankie down and transition to submission opportunities. And he could not do that at any time. I think he had 1/2 a second opportunity to lock on a guillotine, and Frankie Edgar quickly passed guard to make sure that, you know, Faber wouldn't have the opportunity long. So, but let's go through the card and talk about what happened. Now, there's a lot of fighters from the Philippines and Far Eastern countries, so I'm going to ask you guys to pardon my pronunciation of some of these names before we even get going. And I'll be honest with you, some of the guys I wasn't familiar with before the card. Some of them I was. The first fight was Nolan Tickman. He's actually Filipino, so he had the crowd behind him, against Yao Zakui, I believe it was. And basically this fight was extremely boring. It started off on the fight. It was only the opening fight for the Fight Pass card. And they nearly kind of gave Tickman. I mean, I kind of thought Tickman might have deserved to win the fight. It was, like I said, it was a tough fight to watch. It was pretty boring. But Zakui ended up winning the split decision. And if that name is pronounced incorrectly, somebody can put it in the comments and we can learn together. But yeah, so that fight, I mean, we don't need to spend a lot of time on it. It wasn't a great fight. But, you know, Yao ended up winning the fight. Rolled down Zheng versus John De Los Reyes. Now, this was a great fight. I mean, and I'm telling you, I'm not being a prisoner of the moment when I tell you this. This was one of the best fights I can remember seeing. It was a Fight Pass fight against 2 little-known flyweights, but the fight kind of had every single thing you would want to see in a fight. They had moments where they brawled. Then on the ground, they had some outstanding technical work, transitions just all over the place. I mean, gritty escapes from submissions. In the end, De Los Reyes ended up winning by a rear naked choke. But the very rear naked choke that he sunk in to get the win, Roldan nearly escaped the choke 2 times before. He escaped the choke 2 times before De Los Reyes was able to lock it on. I mean, it was crazy. De Los Reyes had a huge cut over his right eye. It actually opened up from a headbutt, but there was some straight, like, Melendez, Diego Sanchez punching at some points, but then there was also elite level grappling at a point too. It was a good fight, and I'm not the only one that said that. Reed Harris, obviously he works for the UFC, he's the director of athletic department. He said this might be the fight of the year. He said Zheng versus De Los Reyes in Manila reminded me of Korean Zombie. The Korean Zombies, by now everybody remembers the fight that the Korean Zombie had against Leonard Garcia. He said it reminded him of that. Now, that's pretty high praise, and like he said, that's saying something. So it was a great fight. Next up was Hoiston Wee taking on Ning Guang Yu. Very early in the fight, it was clear that Wee was not, to me, he just looked like mentally he wasn't in the fight. Wang Yu was clearly the more aggressive fighter. He landed a hard punch early in the fight and some hard body kicks, and it seemed to just zap all of the will to fight out of Wei. In the second round, he got caught with a hard right hand, dropped down on his butt, and just got pounded out by strikes. You ever see a guy in a fight that looks like he's looking for the way out? I would say within 30 seconds of this fight, that's what Wei looked like he was doing. He's looking for a way out. The next fight was Diego Lima taking on Li Jingliang. Is it Li Jingliang? I don't remember. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name, but he fought extremely well. Diego Lima has got to be one of the most disappointing. I mean, he's got to be one of the most disappointing guys out there. I mean, at one point, I thought he really had a future in the UFC, but he's now lost 3 or 4 fights, been knocked out in all 3 of those fights. His defense isn't getting better. Obviously, his chin's not going to get better. It is what it is. But his defense isn't getting better either. And I'm not understanding what he's working on when he's going, in between these losses. But I don't want to take too much away from Lee, because he certainly fought well, and this is not the first time I've seen him fight well. So I think he definitely has a future. But Lima looks like a dude that might need to go to another promotion, get his confidence up, work on some stuff, stay in the same, maybe not stay in the same gym, because maybe he's not learning anything in that gym, but he definitely needs a change, for sure needs a change. The next fight was Cajun Johnson taking on Zheng Laping. This fight, I don't want to call it boring, was kind of slightly dull. Johnson had been in the UFC before. He got knocked out in his only fight. It was back in June of 2014. He was taking on Tae Hung Bang, who was actually on the card as well. And Johnson got banged in that fight, got knocked out. So he hadn't been in knockdown for a year. Got in there this fight. I just still wasn't impressed with his chin, because I thought that Laping kind of lit him up a little bit at one point in the fight. But Laping's takedown defense was so poor that Cajun Johnson was able to take advantage of him and pretty much control the fight easily in a unanimous decision win. So, one of my favorite young fighters, John Super Saiyan Tuck. This dude is exciting to watch. He really is. It's a really balanced game in terms of striking and grappling, and he took out Bang. So if he's friends with Cajun Johnson, he got him back for you, man. Dropped a big right hand on Bang that put him down, jumped on his back immediately, almost reminiscent of a Donald Cerrone finish. Usually Donald Cerrone sets it up with a body kick of some sort, a Muay Thai strike. But John Tuck set it up with a right hand, immediately pounced on Bang's back, locked in the rear naked choke, and he was out of there. Really good performance. John Tuck says he believes he's a top 10 guy in the division. He hasn't done enough to say that, but I can say I see top 10 level talent, overall, but he's got to do a little bit more before he can really stake claim to that. The next fight was Levon Makashvili taking on Mark Edeva. Now, Mark Edeva is Filipino, in front of an entirely Filipino crowd for the most part, and Makashvili almost got robbed. I thought he clearly controlled this fight. He outstruck Edeva 63-36, and he had 7 takedowns. But still, he only won the fight by split decision. I don't know how that happened. I'm not sure. I really don't. It kind of was bewildering to me. But, yeah. But ultimately, the right guy won, so can't, complain too much about it. The next fight, with another Filipino fighter fighting, and it was Philippe Nova. And he came out very strong. Very strong. He also hadn't been in the UFC for a while. And he was absolutely dominating early with his takedowns and his wrestling. But I thought he might have gotten a little bit tired. He was taking on Yu Chul Nam, and Nam seemed to have more gas in his tank, and I thought he took over the fight in the second and third rounds, and I thought he deserved to win the fight. But he didn't get it. He didn't get the nod. Nova won by split decision, and Nam was clearly bothered by the decision, but ultimately ended up showing good sportsmanship and handling it. But he didn't like the decision, and I kind of agree with him a little bit there. Next up was Neil Magny. This dude, you know how Jimmy Butler in the NBA got the NBA's Most Improved Player Award? if they gave out a most improved fighter award for like the last 2 to 3 years, I mean, Neil Magny had to be on the short list. I mean, this guy, I remember watching him a few years back thinking he's never going to be great. He's just a guy in the UFC. But all of a sudden, he's won 7 fights in a row. He came in this fight, I think, ranked 14th. And after his win today over Young Gyu Lim, I believe is how you pronounced it, he should be in the top 10. He got lit up early, kept his composure, made his guy miss, and also allowed Lim to punch himself out. Once he punched himself out, it was clear, first of all, he didn't have much of a takedown defense at all. Magny, one of the strongest parts of his game is his takedowns, and he started to exhibit that easily, dominating Lim from that point on, and ultimately ended up securing a TKO win over him in the second round as he pounded him out with unanswered punches, and they had to stop the fight. But it was an excellent performance for Magny. I think I haven't seen who got the Performance of the Night awards yet, but I think he should definitely be in line for it. Next up, now, if they're going to go on sentiment, then Mark Munoz might very well get one of the Performance of the Night. Now, he did fight very well. He dominated Luke Barnett in what was Munoz's last professional fight. So he's the Filipino wrecking machine. He had his last professional fight in the Philippines and the first ever card in the Philippines. You know, everything was set up perfectly. He won 30-27 on 2 cards, 29-28 on the other. And it was clear. I mean, he had 10 takedowns, 59 significant strikes. And, he clearly dominated. But the highlight of his segment of the card came after the fight when he gave his, kind of a going away speech. And he took off his gloves and left his gloves in the middle of the octagon. That was awesome. Everybody loves Mark Munoz, a real nice guy. It's clear. And he went out on a winning note, so that was pretty cool to see. Next up was the co-feature, Deckard Mousasi against Costa Philippou. Costa Philippou, I don't know. In my opinion, he has to be one of the most overrated guys in the UFC. I mean, he is consistently thrust in front of us as if he is a elite level middleweight, and I just don't see it. The only time you ever see this guy look good is when he's fighting somebody who is going to stand in front of him and not take him down, a la Lorenz Larkin in his last fight. And Deckard Mousasi is a well-rounded mixed martial artist who can strike as well as take you down, and he's a cerebral fighter. So what he did against Philippou is, hey, I know you cannot handle me on the ground, so I could stand up here and I might have a decent chance to fight you on my feet, but you have big power and I'd be playing into your game by doing that. And what he did was be smart, and he took his guy to the ground, and he tried to finish the fight from the ground. Same type of game plan that maybe somebody like Floyd Mayweather or someone like that might do. Hey, why would I fight to your... Yeah, I could have made it a more exciting... Mousasi could have made it a more exciting fight by standing up and trading with Philippou. But he's trying to win the fight, so he has to fight the smart way, and that's what he did. He took him down and absolutely dominated, 30-27 on all 3 cards. Easily smashed him. It was funny because Philippou's a muscle-bound, strong guy, right? Huge, huge-looking guy. Tommy Toehold tweeted, he said, Costa showed up looking like he came out of a comic book, but Mousasi does not care about such things. I would agree. So let's move on to the main event. I already told you who won. Urijah needed to get takedowns, and he couldn't get them. Just couldn't get them. I saw, from a quickness standpoint, Edgar definitely had an advantage, but also you look at Faber has very short arms, so it took so much for him to even be able to get in and land during the exchanges on the feet. So it was a very difficult, tough matchup for Urijah. I'll be honest with you, it was one of those fights that it felt like if he fought him 5 times, the most he'd probably win is 1 round per fight. Just stylistically, it just didn't work out. Just it wasn't a good fight for Faber at all. He didn't get dominated. He didn't get dominated, but it was clear he probably can't beat Frankie Edgar. Just sometimes you lose to a guy and you can make the argument that he could beat the guy, but I just don't think he could beat Frankie Edgar. Just stylistically, it just doesn't match up well. So that was it for the card, UFC Fight Night 66, or UFC in Manila, and yeah, it was pretty decent. So next Saturday we have UFC 187, which would have been so much more awesome with John Jones still on the card, but Anthony Rumble Johnson, Daniel Cormier is still a great fight, as is the co-feature, which is Vitor Belfort against Chris Weidman. And then there's another good fight. You got John McDessie against the previously mentioned Donald Cowboy Cerrone. So that's also a great fight. So it's going to be a good card. I'll do a recap for that one as well. Obviously, it'll become a lot later in the evening. And stay tuned for later on tonight, depending on when you're watching this. If you're watching this the day of, which is, what is today? Saturday, May, what is today? Saturday, May 16th, right? So, yeah, later on tonight, Gennady Golovkin takes on Willie Monroe. I'm not expecting that fight to last longer than 4 rounds, but I will have a recap for you with that one as well. So, y'all stay tuned if you are boxing fans as well. I appreciate you watching. God bless. Peace.